Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
So text number 119 reads as follows. The devotee should treat loss and gain equally. There's a list of items of bhakti, how to practice bhakti yoga, and then also how a pure devotee would naturally express his or her love to the Lord by these means. So, because they are numbers, so first 14 items have been covered, and this is number 15. So the devotee should treat loss and gain equally. 16. The devotee should not be overwhelmed by lamentation. 17. The devotee should not worship demigods, nor should he disrespect them. Similarly, the devotee should not study or criticize other scriptures. Number 18. The devotee should not hear Lord Vishnu or his devotees blasphemed. 19. The devotee should avoid reading or hearing newspapers or mundane books that contain stories of love affairs between men and women or subjects palatable to the senses. 20. Neither by mind nor words should the devotee cause anxiety to any living entity, regardless how insignificant he may be. Now here's a short purport. The first 10 items are do's, and the second 10 items are don'ts. Thus the first 10 items give direct action, and the second 10 items give indirect action. Text 121. After one is established in devotional service, the positive actions are hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, praying, serving, accepting servitorship, becoming a friend, and surrendering fully. So this is in reference to the famous verse from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Prahlada is listing the 9 primary items of bhakti yoga. Okay. So then one should also dance before the deity, sing before the deity, open one's mind to the deity, offer obeisances to the deity, stand up before the deity and the spiritual master just to show them respect, follow the deity or the spiritual master and visit different places of pilgrimage or go see the deity in the temple. One should circumambulate the temple, recite various prayers, chant softly, the word is japa here, chant congregationally, and here the word is sankirtana. Smell the incense and flower garlands offered to the deity and eat the remnants of food offered to the deity. One should attend arati and festivals, see the deity, present what is very dear to oneself to the deity, meditate on the deity, and serve those related to the Lord. Now, the last one, serve those related to the Lord. In brackets, Srila Prabhupada is giving 27 to 30. And what does that mean? The Sanskrit is tadiya sevana. And so the next verse explains what Tadiya Sevana means under 4 different topics. So Tadiya means the tulsi leaves, the devotees of Krishna, the birthplace of Krishna, and then Mathura, and the Vedic literature Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna is very eager to see his devotees serve Tulasi, Vaisnavas, Mathura, and Bhagavatam. And again, there's a short purport. After item 26, meditation, the 27th is to serve Tulasi, the 28th is to serve the Vaisnavas, the 29th is to live in Mathura, the birthplace of Lord Krishna, and the 30th is to read Srimad Bhagavatam regularly. And then continuing, next verse 126. One should perform all endeavors for Krishna. One should look forward to his mercy. One should partake of various ceremonies with devotees, ceremonies like Lord Krishna's birthday or Ramachandra's birthday. One should surrender to Krishna in all respects. One should observe particular vows like Kartika Vrata. These are some of the 64 important items of devotional service. One should associate with devotees, chant the holy name of the Lord, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, reside at Mathura, and worship the deity with faith and veneration. And then we arrive at verse 129, which we could recite together. Sakala sadhana sreshta e pancha anga, Krishna prema janmaya e pancharapa sanga. Sakala sadhana sreshta e pancha anga, Krishna prema janmaya e pancharapa sanga. And we can take the word by word. Sakala sadhana, of all items for executing devotional service.
All items for executing devotional service.
Shrestha, the best. E pancha anga, these 5 limbs. Krishna prema, love of Krishna. Janmaya, awakens. These. Panchera, of the 5. Alpasanga, slight association with or performance. Okay. Slight association with or performance.
Slight association with all performance.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Esi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. These 5 limbs of devotional service are the best of all. Even a slight performance of these 5 awakens love for Krishna. Purport. Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakura points out that there are 35 items up to the point of observing special vows in the month of Kartika. To these 35 items, another 4 are added, namely marking tilaka on different parts of the body, writing the names of the Lord all over the body, accepting the deity's garland, and accepting charanamrita. These 4 items are understood to be included by Kaliraja Goswami within Archana, worship of the deity. Although these items are not mentioned here, they are to be added to the previous 35 items, thus the total number becomes 39. To these 39 should be added 5 others: association with devotees, chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, reading Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, residing in Mathura, the birthplace of Krishna, and worshipping the deity with great respect and veneration. The 39 items plus these 5 come to a total of 44. If we add the previous 20 items to these 44, the total number becomes 64. The 5 items mentioned above repeat previously mentioned items. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami states, Anganam panchakasyasya purvali kitasya cha nikhilasraistya bodhaya punarapyatra sangshanam. The glorification of these 5 items, association with devotees, chanting the holy name, and so on, is to make known the complete superiority of these 5 practices of devotional service. The 64 items of devotional service include all the activities of the body, mind and senses. Thus the 64 items engage one in devotional service in all respects. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So there's a long list of items how to practice bhakti and bhakti yoga. So what's the difference between bhakti and bhakti yoga? Does anyone have any idea? Is there any difference at all? Yes?
Just to guess, but bhakti perhaps is the emotion of devotion, whereas bhakti yoga is devotional service.
Okay. So that sounds reasonable. Yeah. So yoga includes activity and bhakti is more related to the emotion. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to say that yoga is the process of connecting with Krishna.
Yeah.
And bhakti is actually, as she said, the emotion.
Yeah. So if you combine both of your answers, we might come to a following conclusion. That yoga is something that you do before you're pure. And then would we say that the residents of spiritual world are practicing yoga? Probably not. Because they don't have to. The bhakti is just naturally manifesting from the heart. So anyway, there are 2 points before the list of items starts. If you take a look back to verse number 105, 106, 107, this is what we read. When transcendental devotional service by which love of Krishna is attained is executed by the senses, it is called sadhana bhakti, or the regulative discharge of devotional service. Such devotion eternally exists within the heart of every living entity. The awakening of this eternal devotion is the potentiality of devotional service in practice. The spiritual activities of hearing, chanting, remembering, and so forth are the natural characteristics of devotional service. The marginal characteristic is that it awakens pure love for Krishna. And then comes this 107 that I find extremely important. Pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of the living entities. It is not something to be gained from another source. When the heart is purified by hearing and chanting, this love naturally awakens. So the idea here in this verse is that every soul is naturally a lover of Krishna. It's not artificial, there's nothing strange. However, being covered by ignorance since countless of lifetimes, then one is forgetful of one's natural position. So just like a person who is asleep and having a dream, Srila Prabhupada gives this example a number of times, that you can dream actually being eaten by a tiger, and then the experience of encountering a tiger and being horrified and then being eaten up can really feel extremely real. And probably after being eaten up by the tiger you might wake up. I don't know, I never had such a dream, but I could just imagine that at that point it has to end, because what is there to watch after that, because you are eaten up. Anyway, so after that one wakes up and sweating and perspiring and shaking, at the same time realizing there was no tiger at all. I'm lying in my bed and things are quite fine. The nearest tiger is probably in the zoo or in another country, so I'm quite safe. So similarly, when one wakes up to the reality of being a lover of Krishna, then the nightmare of the material life, being eaten up by tigers or having to pay taxes or having to obey traffic lights, that's over. And then everything is nice. But meanwhile, while one is having the nightmare of whatever it is that our conditioned lives consist of, then the question is how to wake up, because as long as the dream is on, it's maybe quite unpleasant at times. And one may really want that, oh, I wish I could wake up from this dream, but I don't know how. Did you ever have this experience when you are dreaming and the dream is not pleasant, that you somehow realize this is a dream and I want to wake up, but then you can't? I had this couple of times. It's very strange, because you realize that this is not real, but at the same time it's on and it's kind of real. I cannot get out of this. So the practice of sadhana bhakti is something like that. You are in a dream and you realize you are in a dream, but then how to wake up? And what is the basic, what makes us experience a dream? What is it, actually? So, it's a mind, to put it plain and simple. So, mind is like a screen. If you go... What's happened?
Something with the translation.
I see, okay. Yeah, thanks for explaining. So mind is something like a screen. So if you go to a movie, we better wait until it's clear. Yeah, so let's say you go into a movie theater to see a film, or you are seeing a film on your computer screen. Then what happens, if it's well done, is one gets drawn into the story, what is going on. And then one starts associating with the characters. And then the main characters, they fall in love, and they seem happy, and whoever is watching the movie feels happy. And then behind the corner there's somebody with a, let's say, chainsaw, who is planning to kill them in the most brutal way. And then you as an observer realize that the main characters don't see it yet, but now it's coming. And then you feel scared. Or anyway, if it's well done, it absorbs the attention to the extent that when horrible things start happening, you cannot pull yourself off. I remember I had this experience in my youth. I was 12 years old, and somehow or other I got into my hands a horror movie which was kind of not appropriate to my age. And then the folks were not at home, so the obvious thing to do was to just start watching the movie. And I remember alone in the house and nobody's there and it's dark, and watching the movie and getting absorbed in it. And in the beginning there's some kind of thrill, yeah, I'm seeing this is exciting. But then after a while I got so scared. I still remember it to this day, one of the most memorable film experiences. It was quite horrible, but related to what we are talking about is that while I realized that this is not real, it's just a film, at the same time I just couldn't turn it off. I was just kind of, absorbed in the horrible experience of witnessing a story which is not real. So it's something like that, being absorbed in the screen of the mind. I mean, we can hear a lecture which is taking place right now, or you can read a book, or you can hear it from a friend that, hey, you are not your mind. And then, gee, that's great. But it still doesn't, automatically disentangle one from the mind just by hearing that. That's the nature of attachment absorption. So what one can do, though, is to realize that, hey, I'm now being absorbed in a reality which is external to myself, and I need to do something about it. I can do something about it, and then let me do that, what that is. And so these 64 items of Bhakti Yoga are different means by which we can overcome our absorption to the screen of our mind and start seeing reality as it actually is, the process of awakening in the very real sense. Now, while there are many items of devotional service, which is very good, because one of the things that mind likes is it likes variety. So pulling off the pure consciousness from the mind is likely to take some time. And because it's likely to take some time, it's a good idea to take into consideration the present conditioning we have. And part of our present conditioning is more often than not that we like variety. Very few people are the kind of old-fashioned samadhi yogis who feel just fine living alone in a cottage, sitting down like 9 hours a day or more, absorbed in only one thought. Most minds like variety, and so in this regard, if it is the case that your particular mind sometimes likes variety, the good news is that if you are practicing Bhakti Yoga, the process itself will provide a lot of variety, because first of all, there's not only 1 or 2 or 3 practices, there are 64 different practices that you can do, and each of these practices has variety within it. So let's say what we have now, the 5 items that are considered the best of all: chanting the holy name of the Lord, associating with the devotees, those who carry Krishna and love of Krishna in their hearts, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, residing in Mathura, worshipping the deity with faith and veneration. All of these items have built-in variety in them. So let's take Srimad Bhagavatam as an example. It's a good example. So while it's one book, okay, so still any book that you read has a story, and there's variety within the story. But Bhagavatam is a very big book, because it has in fact 12 books. And then there are commentaries, and there are many commentaries. And you can practically be absorbed in just one of the 12 and spend many years. But there are 12 of them. Then you can discuss every verse from different angles of vision. And just by sitting down and discussing, I've done this many times. So you just sit down with others, and let's take one verse. What's your point of view? What do you find important in this particular verse? I find it so fascinating that every time you ask 5 different people, what do you find important? You get 5 different answers. And then you analyze, yeah, it's there. It's part of the verse, but still 5 people draw out 5 different meanings, which are all valid. So this is just one example. What about associating with devotees? Immediately there's variety, because, okay, everyone, definition of somebody being counted as a devotee is that the person is devoted, is carrying the love of Krishna in one's heart, and is willing to express that in a variety of ways. But still, we are all individuals, we all have individual natures, and interacting with one person is quite different from interacting with another person. Sometimes it could even feel like, okay, interacting with this other person is nearly impossible, except that we can still agree that sitting down and chanting Krishna's names together is fun. So even in cases where it seems like, from material point of view, we are not really on the same wavelength, but on the spiritual platform we can agree that, yeah, surrendering to Krishna is a good idea. and let's figure out how we can do that together. And with some others, it's a match, it's a click. There's a mutual understanding. I naturally feel at home with this person. And there are different varieties of relationships between people, and that's natural. And so interacting with devotees, that natural inclination of realizing having different kinds of interactions can be done, and that becomes devotional service. It becomes practice, and there's variety. And okay, what about chanting the holy name? Is there variety there or not? Because from one point of view you could say like, okay, when we are singing kirtan, there are no fast rules about the melody, because there are two kinds of Sanskrit. There's Vaidika and Laukika Sanskrit. So Vaidika Sanskrit has strict rules, in fact. You really have to have the accent right, and the level, the note, pronunciation has to be exactly right. Why is that? Because if you have the wrong accent or wrong tone, the meaning changes. There's a famous example in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam about when Tvasta is creating this creature who is supposed to kill Indra, and just by placing the accent wrong, he creates a creature who will be killed by Indra. So it's quite a difference in a meaning, because there's a difference who gets killed. So therefore, it's a good idea to pronounce the Vedic Sanskrit correctly. It's also a good idea to pronounce any Sanskrit correctly, but because in the later Sanskrit these rules do not concern the note, the meaning does not change if you sing it differently. The consequence is that the holy names of the Lord can be sung with very many different melodies, and that gives variety and different rhythm. And then you can use many different names of the Lord. So how many names are there that you can chant? 1, 2, 3. In Hare Krishna mantra there are 3. But what about, is this the end of the list? No. There are unlimited names of the Lord, and all of them can be chanted, and it falls under the category of chanting the holy name. But then I would like to think about one particular practice. Was mentioned previously, japa, but it falls also under the category of just chanting the holy name, because it seems to be the case that in japa there's not that much variety compared to kirtan, right? However, japa in another way comes with a lot of variety if one takes seriously up the challenge that this is my means of connecting to Krishna directly, right away, in real time. And then here I am trying to focus on the holy name. There's me and there's a holy name, and there's my mind, and the mind is having a different program. So it seems like it's a challenge, because the mind is distracted. It's not really cooperating. At least for me, many times I noticed that mind seems to be presenting a totally different program. It's like putting on its best show while it's time to focus on the holy names. Now, taking up the challenge, like, I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna just surrender to my mind. I will be determined to focus on the holy name and bring the mind back time after time to the holy name, while the mind wants to pull off to some kind of different environment, to a different country, something that happened 30 years ago, or what will happen 5 minutes after, or by the way, the position of the body is not that comfortable, maybe I should change something, and it's too cold, so maybe I should put on more clothes, and now it's too warm, and I should, it's endless. We know that, anyone who has tried that. However, when you take, okay, there's variety right there. What is the program that the mind is going to present? Now, don't surrender to that program, because then it becomes like interesting. It's almost like practicing martial arts. you have an opponent, and that's your mind, and somehow you have to conquer your mind, and you have to learn all the tricks of the mind in order to conquer. So it becomes very exciting, in fact, if you take it in that way. Now, let me not give up. Let me just do my best to focus on the holy name. But anyway, all of these items, there's some variety built in. And the variety is also that you don't have to do the same practice all day long. You can do one, and then you can do the other, and then you can do the third. Of course, if somebody really has a lot of taste for one particular practice, then only one practice can take one all the way. So we know there are some examples of devotees who got so absorbed in only one practice, that's all they needed to do. So, some examples, let's say chanting of the holy name. Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakura. There are various estimations about how long time he chanted the holy name before he ate his breakfast. And I wonder if it's even appropriate to call it breakfast, because he spent at least 15 hours chanting japa. So that means it has to be earliest afternoon, probably later than that. So maybe that's not even breakfast. Unless you take it in the sense that break fast, then it makes sense. Doesn't matter what time. Okay, but then sometimes he got so carried away just chanting japa with the holy names that he forgot to eat. My God, that's amazing. Are there other examples of people who forgot to eat because they got so absorbed in devotional service? Yes, they are. When it comes to Srimad Bhagavatam, it turns out that our hero, Pariksit Maharaj, when he heard he has only 7 days to live, he decided, let me now finally perfect my life, taking the humble position, because from another point of view, from our point of view, I mean, his life was perfect from the beginning. Why does he have even the name Pariksit? Means somebody who is always looking for something. Looking for what? Looking for Krishna. I mean, what kind of life is that? Since your childhood you are always looking for Krishna. That's extraordinary childhood and extraordinary life. But still, towards the end, he felt like, yeah, let me invest now these special few days I have left. And then, lo and behold, there's an assembly of sages at the, where Pariksit is deciding to sit down at the banks of the holy river Ganga and fast until he leaves his body and get the final instructions. Can you please advise me, what should I do now? And there's some conversation and disagreement. Maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that, maybe practice Ashtanga yoga, maybe stand on your head, maybe hold your breath. You know, there are unlimited options in the toolkit of spirituality. Then Sukadeva enters the scene. And immediately, it said it takes one to recognize one. So while Sukadeva was wandering around, most people did not recognize his elevated status because most people were not elevated. But here we suddenly have a whole crowd of people where everyone is spiritually elevated. And everyone immediately realized, here is the person who can properly advise the king what he should do. And now Sukadeva sits down, and then king asks, like, what's the duty of somebody who is about to die? And Sukadeva then answers, this question is most glorious, because who is there on this planet who is not about to die? Everyone is about to die. Pariksit, you are fortunate because you know it. Everyone is not so fortunate. And then this amazing conversation begins. And when does it end? It only ends when Pariksit leaves. And before that, the word is, Pariksit did not eat and drink and not sleep. He was just absorbed in hearing Bhagavatam. So how wonderful is that, to be so absorbed in just one process. Like Haridas Thakur, Pariksit Maharaj, Sukadeva just speaking non-stop. It's said that why is Radharani's name only mentioned indirectly in Bhagavatam? The explanation is, which we have from some of the acharyas, that Sukadeva realized that if he would mention the name of Radha loud, he would be so absorbed in the experience of ecstasy that he would have to stop speaking. I mean, these are amazing personalities. It's beyond normal understanding. But at the same time, there's something to be learned. And one of the things to be learned is the practice of bhakti yoga can bring this kind of absorption, pleasant, inspiring experience already quite early. I think most people have experienced it. I have witnessed this with my own eyes. When people come to a kirtan for the first time in their life, they've never been to a kirtan before. They have no idea what is going to happen. Then they somehow either navigate in and sit down. And then for the first 30 minutes they are trying to figure out what on earth is going on in this room. But after that, you know, the defense mechanism of the mind starts to wear off. And then they get, moving along with the music is not such a bad idea. And by the way, they have been singing this one mantra for 30 minutes now. I'm kind of getting to learn it. And then how about joining in it? And literally just joining a kirtan for the first time is so powerful that even a total newcomer who has never done it before can experience its elevating effect. Same thing with all of the different practices of devotional service. There's variety, and there are so many different things we can do in order to express and practice devotion. So I suppose it depends a little bit about the nature of the person. Some people like to do many different things, and others maybe prefer, let me just focus on one or few practices. Particularly those who want to focus only one or a few, then this list of 5 items is very important, because that's kind of boiling it down to a very simple formula. Just do these 5 or even one of these and you can perfect your life. I thought I would read something from the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, because it's related to the nature of devotional service. It's performed with the senses. And we just heard, I read previously earlier from Chaitanya Charitamrita, how bhakti means naturally expressing one's nature. It's not artificial. It's like a natural characteristic of the pure self to be a lover of Krishna and express that love in active ways through the senses. Okay. Now, if this is the case on the perfected state, like in the spiritual world, the perfected devotees would express their pure love by interacting with one another and with Krishna in various ways and performing their devotion in their spiritual bodies, with spiritual senses. But what about now? Then now it is the same thing, that we have a material body and material senses, but we don't really have to wait until we leave this body behind to express devotion. We can start doing it right away in the present body. There's this amazing section in the beginning of 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And I will read you the 5 first verses, just the Srila Prabhupada's translations, because Arjuna inquired in the beginning of 12th chapter. He's kind of concerned now that there seem to be these 2 kinds of transcendentalists. Those who are absorbed in the impersonal Brahman and those who are devoted to the personal Absolute. So which one is better? Because he feels like I'm definitely into the more personal. Bhakti is natural for Arjuna. But then he raises this question, maybe mostly for the sake of others, but it's a very important question. Nobody can evade this question. It requires to be answered. Because it's well known that there are those who are into the impersonal absolute, those who are into the personal. So Arjuna wants to clarify the thing. So Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifest. And then the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the Absolute Truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the supreme advancement is very troublesome. And here the explanation. This is a very interesting argument that Krishna is making. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Okay, let's stop right here. How many practitioners have you met who are not embodied? Right? I mean, who is doing spiritual practice without a body? Everyone has a body. There's a very fascinating point here. Now one of the points is that disembodied practice is in fact a very rare option. It's mentioned in Yoga Sutra. It's not what you regularly do, but if you practice samadhi day in, day out, it means you are practically having a disembodied experience most of your time. And then a natural consequence of that is, if one does not complete the practice, then you can continue the practice in the next lifetime without the body. What that means exactly, I have no idea. But it's called like Prakriti Laya. One becomes absorbed in the matrix of Prakriti, and the Samadhi will be the natural condition. Except those kinds of practitioners, it's very difficult to focus on the impersonal absolute. So, because one has a body, now we have body, it means it feels natural to have a body, and we are accustomed to interacting with others who have bodies. Now, in Bhakti Yoga, this ceases to be a problem. In Ashtanga Yoga, if you have a body, it's a problem. Having a body is a problem in Ashtanga Yoga. You have to figure out, how can I pull off my mind from the body as soon as possible? As soon as possible may require some 50 years of preparation, but still that's the goal. As long as the mind is residing and consciousness is absorbed into the bodily existence, that's a problem, and yoga needs to overcome that problem. Nowadays it has become customary to advertise yoga means union of soul, body and mind. But that's wrong. Yoga is the method which is meant to solve the problem which is caused by the soul being absorbed in the body and mind. But in Bhakti Yoga, it's not a problem, because at the level of perfection, one expresses pure love of Krishna with the spiritual body and spiritual senses. And now being absorbed in the material body, you don't first have to leave that behind in order to express that then. Because it's natural at the level of perfection, then you can just start practicing what is anyway natural to you right now. And by the way, it is natural to all of us right now to be embodied. So we can just start doing what we would anyway do for the rest of eternity. After achieving perfection, we can start right now, and starting it right now is natural, because what else is new? We are using our bodies and senses and interacting with other persons who have bodies and senses. That's called life. So in devotional service, what is anyway natural from morning till evening, now you just figure out how to fit that somehow within this list of 64 items, and then continue expressing yourself with your bodies and minds, but now changing one fundamental condition. Previously it was, I'm doing this for myself, and now I'm doing it for Krishna. That's all. Well, easier said than done, because the mind easily does not accept this fundamental shift, and then you just have to, bypass the dissenting voice of the mind and do it anyway. And the good news is that the mind is malleable. Malleable means it can be molded. It tends to adjust itself. So when one starts practicing devotional service in any of these items that have been mentioned, then in the beginning mind may protest because it tends to resist any change. But when it adapts, then now it becomes a new normal. And then the mind starts yearning after a while. Oh, I really want to chant my daily dose of rounds of the holy names. I really want to go to the temple and see the deities because I want to do that every day. And I want to associate with devotees because I want to associate with them, and I did it yesterday and I did it last week. And I want to relish prasadam because, yeah, it's a very good diet. And I did it yesterday and I'm gonna do it tomorrow as well. So mind gets accustomed. So it's a blessing. So these are some points of view to be said about devotional service. It's performed with the senses, which means it's natural. You can utilize your bodily condition. There's variety built in all of the practices, and there are also many practices which takes into the consideration the fact that the mind oftentimes likes variety, so you can just move from one devotional activity to another. And it's very powerful. One can achieve the same perfection that in previous ages might have taken thousands of years of lonely samadhi, or practicing these kind of really extensive yagyas, preparation of which might take the whole year. Like Ashwamedha yagya, it takes one whole year, to my understanding, to do it properly. Or this kind of extensive temple worship, where practically speaking a whole community is engaged, like one whole village or town could center their life around this kind of Dvapara Yuga temple worship. All of that can be achieved by following any of the items listed here, and particularly then we know one item is particularly recommended for the age of Kali. So let me end by reading from Kali Santarana Upanishad, a free translation. So Narada and Brahma are having a discussion. Narada wants to know what is the means of getting liberated in the age of Kali, where it seems like practically speaking impossible. So Brahma answers, listen to that which all Shrutis keep secret and hidden, through which one may cross the samsara of Kali. He shakes off the evil effects of Kali through the mere uttering of the name of Lord Narayana, who is the primeval Purusha. And then Narada asks, like what? How to chant the name of the Supreme, and Brahma replies, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Did you know it starts in Kali Santarana Upanishad like that? And then Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. These 16 names are destructive of the evil effects of Kali. No better means than this is to be seen in all the Vedas. So if you really want to boil everything into just very simple formula, then Hare Krishna mantra would be a very good candidate. But if you sometimes want to do something else, there's a whole list of 64 items. So I'll end here. Hare Krishna. Do you have any questions, comments regarding? Yes?
Можно? Харе Кришна. Ну, первое оружие ума, для питания для ума, это хлеб. А? Повторите. Я говорю, первое оружие ума, это хлеб мучной, мучные продукты.
First thing that Maya use, it's bread.
The first weapon.
Yeah, the first weapon of Maya is bread.
Is bread? What?
Bread.
Bread.
Да, они очень сильно дают силу уму.
Because it get very big power to the mind,
И потом ум начинает думать.
and then mind start to think.
Если даже просто вот самому на недельку не есть мучных, да,
Even
то джапа усилится по-другому.
if I try to not to eat bread 1 week, my japa will be better.
Okay.
Даже есть песня такая. Ты запомни, сынок, золотые слова, хлеб всему голова.
Here is one song. My son, please remember these golden words. Bread
is head.
is head to everything.
Она кармическая песня.
It's karmic song.
Так что нужно просто с хлебом немножко прекратить, и дело пойдет по-другому.
We have to give up our connection with bread.
Он сильно принимает информацию, тот, кто его готовит, кто предлагает, и лучше с хлебом быть очень осторожным.
У вас вопрос? Или вы хотите просто это комментарий?
А не, мы разговариваем.
So, this was just a commentary about bread and...
Yes, I see. Thank you for the advice. For those of us who cannot live without bread, at least we should try to offer the bread to Krishna. But yes, japa gets. I would then say generally, like my experience is whatever improves japa should be adopted. So yeah, like if you notice that going to bed early improves japa, then that should be adopted. If particular diet is conducive, then that should be adopted. Like it's easy to get, one of the things I find, like you start the spiritual practice and in the beginning it's exciting, things start changing, everything seems happening so fast. But then after a while it's like this experience like sailing the sea. When you're taking off you can see what is happening, but when you are in the middle of the sea you don't really see it because there's no land, there's no point of reference. So you may still be moving forward, but then some kind of boredom may set in, like okay, this seems to be a long journey, and one may even forget why one set on the journey in the first place. So it's very good to be reminded of that, okay, but we really want to conquer Maya and reach our destination as soon as possible. And then instead that spirit, I think anyone can just sit down and have a moment that what should I change during the next week in order to improve my japa? It's not rocket science. I think everyone would immediately get at least 5 good ideas. And how about if I implement at least 2 of them? So, anyway, thank you. I was very inspired by your comment. Seriously. So, thank you very much. Anything else? Okay, we end here. Saitara Saritamrita ki jai. Shila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Grace
Я на самом деле... Я вот тут говорю, что я сам не сидел. Да, я согласна с вами. Собственно, я тоже
Because they say that, for example, that's true. Yeah, so every second long. So you still having yes, I'm having and now often last